This conference will now be recorded.
Good to see everybody. John Kassar, welcome. So today, John is going to be taking us through the process of logging in or accessing the sandbox, and also talking us through the what he and I talked about in terms of developing the version that's going to go into production. I presume we're all going to have our own sandbox version, but what we're going to do is replicate what is in the trial version, which shouldn't really take a long time, even if we can't import the forms and the entities that we now have. It'll be a fantastic exercise in any event, but we're really going to just be recreating what is now working in the trial version, and using that to develop our sandbox version, which then we can test perhaps with the actual data, and then we can cut it over to production after that. John, I'm going to give you the screen and the control. Please add whatever you want. I hope I got that right. John, are you there?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what's going on. My headset doesn't seem to be working, so I'm talking through the mic on my computer. So is it clear enough for people?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right.
Yes, I can hear you too.
Yep, same here.
Great. Thanks. So let me.
And I've given you the screen, John.
Okay. Okay. So John, question for you, because I was having trouble with my getting things set up. What do you want to do for today? Do you want to go through this document that I created and assign some things? What would you like to do, or access the app? What are your thoughts? Just so I'm clear.
Well, let me tell you what I think we need to do, and then I want anybody to add if I've missed anything, or if there's a burning need by anybody else. I'll want you to kind of log in. For me, it's about accessing the sandbox. When I accessed it, there was nothing in there, and I didn't really know quite what to do with that. I'm having trouble logging into the production environment, and it's for some reason, I mean, I didn't have a password, so I had to tell the system that I forgot my password, or I don't have it, and I'm now trying to use that process to get in. But for me, once we get in, so if you can show us how to get in, number one, and then number two, how to access our portion of the sandbox where we can begin to replicate the application and develop it into what can then be migrated over into production. That would be fantastic. Anybody else?
This is Dan here. It's saying that I'm not a member when I try to log into any of those environments.
And which Dan was that, by the way?
Dan Schumate.
Okay. Hey, Dan. All right. Sorry, because we had a couple Dans. So I want to make sure I'm still learning voices. So my apologies.
No problem. And sorry for not, last week I was traveling, so I tried to call in when I could, but it wasn't all the calls.
No problem. So Dan Shumate, John Reynolds, Sarita, I just sent, and then Julie Yak, I sent out an email this morning. Did you guys get that?
Yes. Well, I got one from you.
Yeah.
Yes, I received it.
Okay. So the first question is, if you guys logged into here, were you able to get in or not with this link I provided?
No, that's one of them that tells me I'm not a member.
Same here, actually, John. This is John.
Interesting. Let me think about this here.
This is being recorded, by the way, so I will post this as soon as it's ready for production.
Okay.
Sarita, did you get the copy of Wednesday's meeting? Were you able to access that?
Yes, I was able to access it and I listened to it. Thank you for posting that.
Oh, sure. I'm just kind of new to this stuff, so I'm not sure. I'm not actually, it may be a little bit confusing for people. I've got 2 copies of everything in 2 different locations. I'm trying to consolidate that.
So bear with me, I'm trying to make sure that you all have access here.
One more. You're a stinker. You're a stinker. You're cute. I love you. One more. One more.
Okay, so bear with me here. While we're waiting, John Reynolds, have you shared this document with people?
Yes, I have. Did everybody receive this?
This look familiar?
Yes. Yes, I saw it in the Salesforce chat room.
Okay. Okay. So essentially, and John Reynolds and I spoke, we want to make sure, and John Reynolds is going to designate duties on essentially what needs to be done here between creating the one-to-many and one-to-one relationships. So I'll look to John for this. I'm going to do a little bit today with you on the phone so that I know that some things are set up properly. And then I'm going to let you guys go at it after working with John Reynolds to, you know, designate duties, so to say. But literally everything is here, including, you know, what are the fields that need to be in here. And then these are a couple of yellow highlights. This is for Dan Shimade that we'll have to just check on. And I put in some screenshots, what have you. And then I even put, these are the screenshots on how to create the new one-to-many relationships. What is not here, just so you know, is the area, is we need to create a new one-to-many field or database table for training entities in their the training center location. So it'll be similar to some of the screens that you've seen previously, but I did not go through the details there. So that's the one thing that's not there yet.
Yeah, I think we have. First of all, John, I want to really thank you and commend you for putting all that painstaking time into this. It's really a great document and full of detail. I think once we get access to the sandbox, I think we're pretty good to go in terms of what we need to do. So yeah, that's the you've really set this up beautifully. So again, you know, thank you.
Sure, no problem. And I don't know why the security is not being set up, but in the meantime, while we're doing this, I'm gonna actually do a little bit of training here for you. I'm gonna set up what's called the solution file for a moment. Okay. It's something that needs to be done, and I just want to make sure it's done right the first time in the sandbox. So I want to make sure that I'm going to do that right now. So.
And pay close attention, because you guys as Microsoft Dynamics administrators or developers will be doing this on your, or be called upon to do this on your own. So this is part of the training, John, if that wasn't, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's correct. All right, so, and by the way, this is the old UI. A lot of stuff is in flux to go to the new UI, even for the administration. But I'm going to go to solution file.
UI is user interface.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first off, let me explain what we did. And some of this, you know, a little bit what we did in the previous 90-day version, which was to create a solution file and put everything, all the configurations in there. And then at that point, we could copy all those configurations to this production for Microsoft. The reason I've chosen not to bring those over is because there was so much stuff in there. And some of the stuff was in flux, some of the stuff was duplicated. I was like, you know what? This was great. It was a great training area for the team, but now putting it in our Microsoft systems, I just really wanted to make sure that it was very clean going in. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so want to make sure, and also I brought this up to John. The work that was done was not in vain. It was really great training stuff, and now we just need to make sure that it's clean going in the first time. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, and this we might even do if we ever do this again with another cohort, we might do it exactly the same way again. And certainly we wouldn't do it this way if we were working directly for a client. But John is right. I think the learning experience and learning value by doing it this way on so many levels is just so spot on that I'm not sure we would be doing an awful lot of things differently, at least procedurally.
Right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a solution file. And if you want to take notes, great. If not, this is obviously being recorded. So what a solution file is, it's an area that you put in specifically, and I'm going to emphasize specific, different words. It is you want to put in there specifically the database entities, fields, and forms that you are anticipating making changes to. If you are anticipating not making any changes to different forms and views, do not put them in the solution file. Basically, you're a surgeon and you're only taking exactly what you need, no more, no less, when we start creating solution files. Okay?
So John, could you at this point make the distinction between an application and a solution, if you could? I'm a little confused, and I suspect maybe others might be.
Yeah, so I created the application and I did it so that you could all have access, which again, for whatever reason, I do not know why I'm having issues getting to the security area so that you all have access. So for whatever reason, it's just not there. So creating a solution file is
The solution, in other words, is a subset of an application. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Okay.
So
okay.
if you'll notice,
that subset. I'm sorry. It's that subset in which that comprises all of the elements and the forms and objects and stuff to which you intend that you want to make changes to. It's
correct.
It's contained to that. Okay.
Yeah. So for example, I created this literally this morning, it says an hour ago, the MSA vet app. And so this will look very familiar to you, right? But it doesn't have all the sales related stuff in it. Okay. But that's the app itself. But if I wanted to, and again, this is when you first log in, you will have the ability to make, you go to powerapps.com and log in, and you should be actually automatically logged in. But right from here, I can edit this application here for a moment. Here are the entities that I've created in my navigation, my sitemap, what I'm bringing in, etc. So I don't want to get into the whole thing about creating apps right now because I needed to create something immediately so that you would all have access again, but we're still having access issues, so I'll have to figure that out, okay? But if you would like to create an app, there are some ways to do that, and maybe we'll do that in another session, and maybe I'll do that in the sandbox area, or the non-production sandbox area for Microsoft in that 90-day environment, and we can do that to your heart's content. But again, I needed to create this quickly so that you would all have access. And again, my goal will be to reboot this system. Matter of fact, let me just do that right now. So here's a little training issue. If you have challenges from time to time, as you will, you can go to, let's see here. Basically, I'm going to go to all my history here. And I'm just going to clear this all out and all my cookies, etc. So maybe it's having some kind of an issue to get in. Then I'm going to close up my browser and then restart it. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Is that the one? Yes, that's the one. By the way, how many of you are familiar with creating separate user profiles within Google Chrome? You guys know what I'm talking about?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Like if I have multiple emails.
Who does not know what I'm talking about?
I've not done it.
Okay. Gonna make this, I did this with John Reynolds. I would strongly suggest you do this. You can set up multiple profiles, and you go back to the recording here. I'm gonna click on this little dog here because that's the only picture I had. And if you notice, I have a profile called John. This is my personal one, syncs up with my Gmail, my YouTube, whatever. Then I've got my demo environments. This is another one altogether. This happens to be for Cliff Bar that I'm working on. This happens to be another environment, and I have the 90-day military environment that we've been working in as well. But each one of these environments is completely separate, which means it has its own cookies, its own passwords, everything, so that Google does not get confused, Google Chrome does not get confused with which environment you're in. And then sometimes you'll say, oh, I don't have access to this environment because it's confused. So you keep each environment kind of in its own section. And the way to create new Google environments is click on the little thing here, and you can say manage people, and you can start adding people with different pictures. Okay, so this one and if you'll notice here on my desktop, I have Cliff, another environment. So I actually have all of these completely separate.
Does that allow you to change your bookmarks? Is that your bookmarks?
So there are no bookmarks. Every time you open up a new environment, you get your own set of cookies, own set of bookmarks, own set of passwords, everything. But again, it's kind of like opening up an incognito window, brand new window. But you can't, you keep opening up incognito windows, you're confused, whatever, just create a separate user profile and be done with it.
Got it.
Okay. So let me go here.
Now, when you created this Power App, what did you create it based? The way I understand that is that you're creating it based on like the CRM module. In other words, everything that was already built into a solution is going to be part of your Power App or available to you in a Power App. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So whatever your starting point is, and all the entities and however much modification you've done at a higher level is going to affect what you're seeing and using in the Power App.
Correct.
Okay.
So let me go here.
It's been difficult for me whittling down what I don't need because, as a developer, you're always doing it the opposite way. You're putting in what you do.
Yep. Absolutely correct. So when you log in, you should all be able to see these kind of things here. And I'm going to right click here and say, open this in a new tab. And this is the veterans application that I created. And I'm going to also open up the advanced settings here, and let's see if I can get to the security one last time. And if not, I'll take that offline because it wasn't opening up earlier. Of course, now it does, no problem.
You got all of us. All right.
Okay. So I'm giving you all administrator access, not just system customizer. So this way you can look at the various, create certain apps and look at the apps. But again, I want you to be very careful on doing different things. So for example, and this is our Microsoft.com production environment. This is not the 90-day environment that we were working in before. The 90-day environment, you can search and destroy. It was a great practice environment. You can do anything you want. But this, I want you to be very careful with, okay? So I'm going to go to powerapps.com here. And again, we'll ask you to sign in, but because I'm already signed in, it will go right there. And right from here, because I'm in my Microsoft.com environment, the last environment I was in was MSSA SB, which stands for Sandbox. And the other one, and if you'll notice, there's a whole lot of environments. This is our Microsoft.com environment. You will not be able to access any of these other environments because you don't have permissions to. But I'd also ask that you really honor Microsoft, and you're all under non-disclosure anyway, but I'd ask that you honor Microsoft and not try to get into the others anyway. So the only ones that are here for you are this military affairs, and then there's the MSSA sandbox, which is what we're in now.
Hey, John.
Pardon me?
Real quick, I'm following along. This is Dan Shoemate, and when I go in, I went to the Power Apps, and when I go into environments, the only things that I have, let me close this out, I have 3 different Contoso ones. I have a testing, I have vets, and I have vets to VFR. That's all I have.
Do me a favor, Dan, when you get a moment, if you could send me a screenshot of that. I might have to deal with every one of you individually to figure out why you don't have access, but
Okay.
We'll try to figure that out. But right from here, again, you can create apps. And to Victor, I think that was your point in the background, is this was all based upon the data base with all the entities, everything that's already there. We end up creating what's called a model-driven app. Okay. And I'm just going to create one here just because I can real quickly. But you give it a name, you go through things, and then you start going through and adding all the entities. And if you'll notice here, again, this is one I created. And if I go to the editing of this, the first thing it asks you is for your sitemap. That is the navigation on the left-hand side of the screen here. Okay, and if you'll notice here, if I click on sitemap and I edit it, my work, activities, I've got employers, I've got veterans. If you go back into the 90-day environment we set up before, again, this is part of your learning, you would see all of the sales related stuff, which had a lot of stuff in that sitemap. Okay, but I've trimmed it all down. This is all we need. Save and close. Actually, let me go back here. One last thing.
We're going to be wanting to add like custom entities, like
which we haven't done yet. That is correct, because they're not in the overall database structure, so I cannot add them here.
Right. Okay. So we have to, we obviously have to add them before we can, or create them before we can add them to list.
Yeah.
Understood.
So if you'll notice here, as you get here, you have kind of the main area, you've got a subgroup, and then you have the specific items. So under employers, we have accounts and contacts, right? Pretty straightforward. And if you'll notice here, employers, accounts, contacts, my work. And this is just called the MSSA Vet app. That's the name of this app we created. Here's the subgroup, and then here's the specific navigation item.
Now, John, the question, now this is an app you created, just to be clear, we're all going to be able to create our own apps, which essentially will, be where we can build or rebuild what needs to be done. Is that correct?
Incorrect. This is the app that you are going to be adding on to. I created this with the database structure because I needed to create something that you could log into and you could see.
So in terms of Sarita, Robert, Victor, Daniel, being able to build, in other words, to parallel build what we have done, that's not going to be possible, correct?
That is correct. Well, let me back up. The app is only the ability to show up one of these icons called the Vet app. I could have called it a sales app. I could have called it whatever. This is built so that you could log in to continue developing the app. All I did was create this shell of an app for you to continue doing everything else that is on that document that you shared, all the configurations.
So where will our students be able to essentially, play with stuff, experiment, build in an environment that doesn't impact the production?
So this document here that I created, this is all the fields that need to be created, all the one-to-many, one-to-one. Just I want to scroll up to something so that you can see it very clearly.
No, actually, my question, John, was different. It is.
No.
Is there any way? Go ahead.
I think I understand your question. My point is, in this Microsoft.com domain that you are logging into, this is where you're going to be doing all the work and essentially replicating what you did in those training sandbox environments. That's where you're going to do all the work that's in this document here that I sent out, which is essentially a replication of what you did before. If you wish to create your own apps, play around, search, destroy, what have you, you're going to do that in the first environment that I set up for you, or in the trial environment you set up for yourselves.
Okay. That was really my question. This sandbox is really not a place where you could go in and build stuff, take it down, and just experiment. The better place to do that is the first place where we still have access to, the Contoso environment.
That is correct. Or in your own trial environment.
And one of the things we're going to find, John, if you don't have the full answer to this, is one of the things we might want to experiment with is, can we, in effect, migrate or import anything we've done in the Contoso environment over in, can we copy and paste, in other words, any of, for example, of forms? I don't know the answer to that, John. I think that was still an open question with you, or?
So I've chosen not to try to copy and paste it into this production environment, as for the reasons we talked about. There's too much duplication. There were things that were not clean. I don't want to bring them in.
Okay. So this is a greenfield. Yeah, we're just building from the ground up.
Right.
Yeah.
But with a sandbox environment, you still do need to create the solution file that you can copy and paste into the production environment. So you're going to be working on a solution file in this production sandbox to move over to the full production later. And that's how the copy and paste works, which I am not there yet. I'm going to show you how to get there. We're going to start creating a solution file that you can do anything you want with. Okay?
Okay.
John,
now, the
this
application. So the
Yeah.
application, John, is we can build the application with all the customized entities and the forms and views and whatnot, and then the solution file then will sort of be self-defined in a way, or do we have to
Yes,
wait for the
hold off on
solution
that
file?
question. Yeah, hold off on that question, John. You'll see how I'm creating the solution file. It will make sense to you.
Okay. Thank you.
John, this is Robert. I have a real quick question. Basically, yes or no. Is this going to be a single solution project, or will there be multiple solutions?
At this point, as part of the statement of work, it is a single solution project at this point. That doesn't mean it can't get bigger, but it depends really upon the use cases for the Microsoft's Department of Military Affairs.
Okay, awesome. Thanks.
Okay.
Uh,
So,
And this is Victor. And have you, when you created this app, have you chosen not to put any data in it?
that is correct. It's literally a shell of an app. There's no data in it.
Yeah,
Now,
there's an app,
this is
there's
a-
an option, right? I think.
This
when
is
you
a
make it.
sandbox, so I
Yeah.
can absolutely put data in it if it would be helpful to you. But so much data is around case management, sales stuff, all the stuff that we are not seeing. It's all around accounts and contacts, really, and the custom entities that we will be creating.
Right, and then you're going to do you're going to do a data connection as well. You're going to connect it to something in the back on the back end.
Well, when I created this app, and this is a good question here, are you noticing right here which environment I'm in?
Yeah, it's not our CRM. It's a completely new, which I tried to go to. We don't. Yeah, and you're going to work on giving us access
Right.
to it. Yeah.
And I'm going to create a model-driven app.
Right.
But the moment I create a model-driven app from here, it's asking me the name. It already knows that I have a Dynamics database in the background for me to connect to. So if I look here under data, I can see literally, and this will make perfect sense to you. Do these entities look familiar to you?
Yeah, that's
Contact.
everything from the Dynamics CRM, right?
Absolutely correct. Everything is here, including forecasting, which has to do with forecasted sales, but who cares? It's part of the database, but you're not going to use it. Knowledge base articles, not going to be using it. Make sense?
Those are available to you, but you'll pick and choose which ones you use. Right now,
Correct.
you're not right now you're starting from scratch. So
Right.
so those
And
are,
if I
those are not
chose
part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and if I chose to do a different app, I can get data, and this is a good training for you. I can get data from any data sources to create what's called a Power App and so forth. We're going to digress a little bit. I don't want to confuse you all, but this is the backend database or the common data service of Dynamics, which is basically an entire database that every business would use. Every business has got accounts they deal with. Every business has got contacts they deal with. At a minimum, every business has activities they wish to track. Those three are at a minimum that every business needs. From there, if they want sales, we got forecasting, we've got opportunities, we got leads. If they want customer service, we got cases. But again, to your point, Victor, it is all built, and I'm going to use what I need, nothing more, nothing less. And if it's not here, like job postings, I will create it.
Copy. Thank you.
No problem. All right. So this is the newer user interface, Power Apps. It has some issues and not quite clean. You could use the classic interface, but if you wanted to use this, do you remember how we created new entities? We could do it here as well. If you wanted to do it here, or you could do it in the classic view. It is up to you. I'm teaching you on the classic view because there are still a few shortcomings in the full view at this point. Okay, But if I wanted to, if you remember under the account record, instead of the tree structure, you got the structure across the top here. It's 6 of one, half dozen the other, whichever you wish to work on to configure your work. And John, you're going to divvy out who's going to do what on which forms. And if you'll notice here, I have my relationships. We don't have remove filter. Okay, there we go. Here's all my one-to-one and one-to-many relationships. They're all right here. Business rules, views, etc. Okay. This is one area. If you like this, great. If you don't, and you want to go to the classic view, which I tend to like, this is just me personally. If you'll notice, here's the classic view. It's the exact same thing, but just in a different view. Personal preference on how you wish to do things. Does that make sense for people?
Yeah. Now under the customize this system, I noticed in our other CRM environments, when you're at this level, you're at the highest level. Everything you do here affects all of your sub solutions. That's what I was gathering, because there was one place where you were able to change your entities and you only saw about 4 or 6 entities. But when you're at this top level, as you see to the left, you've got all your entities available.
That is correct. So
yeah.
Right now, and this is again for training, we're going to create a solution file. And by the way, again, you don't need to create it in this system. And what I'm going to do is creating a solution file here. All this stuff that's highlighted, create context. Yeah. So this whole area that I'm just going to highlight in something that's not, there we go. Okay.
Now, John, a question, we've talked about applications, solutions. What exactly is an environment? In other words, how is it distinct from
So you're an environment, and I'm just going to put this down here.
Oh, don't do in the sandbox.
Yep.
Do not do in the sandbox. Yeah, is the point. Yeah.
I just want a point of clarification, really. So underlying the solution is the common data service. The common data service is kind of limited by the environment. Each environment has its own common data service. Is that correct?
Yes. So when you create, when someone licenses Microsoft Dynamics, they get the entire underlying database structure called the common data service, which at that point, they can build an app on 1 entity, 10 entities, 2 entities. It doesn't matter.
But a solution sits on that common data service. So like you can have an entity that's specific to a solution, or you can create an entity on kind of the foundational common data service that's available to every entity. Am I understanding that correct?
Absolutely correct. And going one step further, when you talk about solutions, the Dynamics sales solution, which people use it for their salespeople, that is a sales solution application. Customer service, sales solution application, and both of those are built upon the common data service as a platform.
And each of the different solutions have different entities, like the contact entity for the sales solution will be a bit different than the contact entity for the customer service solution, right?
It's actually the same exact entity. There's only one. Now, whether it's using all aspects of that entity and all the relationships is a different story. But there's only one contact entity, there's only one account entity, there's only one opportunity entity, so to say. So it's all in the common data service.
But customizations to those entities, if you make a customization to the contact entity, like I have a sales license, I have a customer service license. For my sales contacts, I want to customize the form a bit. For my customer service contacts, I want to customize the form a bit. Those customizations are going to be specific to the solution, not the entity for any solution that's implemented, correct?
That's incorrect. So if I add the word dog's name to contact, I want to track dog's name for my customers, okay? I'm creating a one-to-one relationship field to the contact. And that is universal because the business, because sales users will use the contact entity, customer service people will use the contact entity, and as such, that field you created for dog's name is available, and I'm stressing the word available
Understood.
by both the sales and customer service. In terms of permissions, you could put that field for sales users and customer service users would never see it. From a permission standpoint, you can hide the field, you can do it on the form, you can do it at a field level, however you want to do it. But it is a configuration to the entity as a whole, and if the user gets it or not is up to permissions.
Okay, I was using business rules to kind of do that. Like,
yeah, you can do it that way too. You can do it that way too.
Okay, cool. No, thanks.
No problem.
That's the beauty, but also the double-edged sword. It's very hierarchical. So what you introduce is always inherited. So you have to keep whittling out where it's used. I get it. It's very powerful, but at the same time, it's you have to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you screw up everything below you, the hierarchy at which you were working.
Yeah. At another training session, we're going to go through all the role-based security, which is incredible what you can allow people to do or not do in terms of down to the level of detail. So, but that's not a lesson for here today. So the next thing is, which we did in the 90-day environment, I'm going to go to solutions, okay? And I'm going to create a shell to put in my solutions, which hopefully should happen soon. Let's see. Okay, here are the solutions that are currently here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to create a new solution file. And again, solution files are used to copy over configurations from one dynamic systems to another. John Reynolds asked me this question. What is the difference between what's called a managed solution versus an unmanaged solution, which is what we are going to create? A managed solution is basically put together by a third-party ISV integration solution vendor like LinkedIn, like DocuSign, like Inside View. They put together what's called a managed solution file that allows you to have access to their application, but when you uninstall it, it uninstalls everything, and you cannot make any changes to a managed solution file. So we are going to create an unmanaged solution file so we can always continue to make changes because, Dan and the team is going to want that. Make sense?
John, for the if we distribute this app to like some end user, it would then be a managed solution for them, but we would maintain the unmanaged solution. and then push
Correct.
out like patches and such. Okay.
Correct. So I'm going to create a new solution here, and I'm going to call this publisher. You got to put something in, and I'm just going to create a new one here. Well, that's okay. CDS default publisher, that's fine. Actually, you know what? Let me create one here. This way we all know what it is. Okay. And this version number, I can't remember the versioning control the way they have this set up, but I'm going to leave it like this for now. I'm going to press save. Okay. Now, if you'll notice, we still have nothing in here whatsoever. This is literally all the parts of dynamics, but we've got nothing in here. So I'm going to add existing entities. And if you remember, we need to do this surgically. So I'm going to add an existing entity. I'm going to add the account entity, and I'm going to do this one by one so we can get this going here. So I'm just going to add the account entity. And Dan, for your, Dan Shivani, this is basically employers, okay, or businesses. So now it's going to ask me, now that I'm bringing in this entity, what specifically am I wanting to bring in? Are we going to be doing AI for sales for this application for Dan and his team?
No.
Nope. So we don't care about that form. We do care about the account form. We do care about the account quick create form. Okay. Social profiles, account card, all the rest of the stuff. Don't care. We're not making any changes to it. We're not bringing it into this solution file. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Views. These are the list views with the various columns. We may put in the account, we may add a column to the account list view. These are all stock stuff that come with Common Data Service, okay? We'll probably use we might use the account associated view. These are different views. And the other one we're probably going to do is active accounts and then my active accounts. They may want to change some of those to have some different columns entered into them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you can change the title too, right?
Yeah, we can change the titles, but for right now, this is all stock stuff we're bringing in. Okay.
One example, we might want to create, for example, a custom view that is current employers, right, of our graduates, something like that. Or you could certainly add a column and then sort by, whether or not they've hired somebody. But yeah, these are good. This is a good start. It's not to say it's definitive, but yeah.
Okay. Is there another question, or can I move on? Okay. Charts. Okay. Again, this is all things that we are going to make changes to. At this point, we have not decided if we're going to make any changes to any charts. And a lot of these charts have to do, with sales or customer service, new accounts by month, accounts by territories. This is stuff that they don't need at this point. Okay. Fields. Again, what are we going to make changes to? Okay. Just because they're all here doesn't mean we're going to make changes to them. But I will tell you some ones we're going to make changes to right off the bat. the address one city stuff. And the reason we're going to make changes to it is because the address one shows up in your forms. Someone's making a lot of noise. You can mute yourself, please. Okay. The address one shows up on the label of the forms by default, and it automatically shows up on the columns in the views, which is kind of a pain in the ass. You just want it to say, you know, street 1, 2, city, state, zip. You don't need to have it say address 1, street 1. Address 1, street 2 for apartment number. Address 1, city. You see what I'm getting at? It's too much of a pain in the ass. So we're getting rid of all of we're going to be bringing in the specific address 1 fields for this. We don't really care about the address 2 because we're really not going to be using address 2. Address line 1, address line 2. And we might change, like I said, we might change the labels for these, but that's about it. The display name, see it's a street. So we're going to be changing display names for them, not the underlying fields. Does that make sense for people? And I don't think Dan's going to want anything from longitude and latitude. He's not flying over there or taking a ship or dropping anything off there. Right, Dan?
Yeah, I'll be good without that.
Shipping method, not shipping here, these things. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. Keys, wouldn't worry about it. The one to N, one to many relationships, we're not making changes to them. We will be adding to them when we add job postings and so forth, but we are not making changes to the native stuff. Okay. Similarly, N to one, we're not making any changes to native stuff. Many to many, not making any changes. Messages, don't care. Business rules, we're not making changes. Hierarchy rules, we're leaving it the way it is. And the dashboards, we're not making any changes at this point. So does that make sense how we've surgically kind of chosen the right things? All right.
Yes.
Finish. Now, sometimes when it does this, it'll say, hey, you might need to bring this on because it's dependent. Maybe you've missed something, but for right now, let's assume you haven't. So what's another entity we're going to be making changes to?
Contact.
That would be correct. Is that an existing entity or is that a brand new entity?
It's an existing one.
Okay. Let's add it right here. Okay. Scroll down and find it. Okay, so what forms are we going to use? What forms do we want to take?
The main form, quick create form, and scroll down a bit. I think there's quick views. The quick view form. Yeah, the cards. I don't know if that's something we want to incorporate. My understanding is they're just like kind of like snippets of the information included in the bigger entity.
Correct. Let's take that just in case. We might do that. And now that I think about it, we may not have that. I may not have chosen that from the account one, so we can always go back there and add it.
What about social profiles? No. Does that include LinkedIn, access to LinkedIn, for example?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
We're definitely not going to do that. There is a managed solution file that needs to be brought in, and that's going to be the LinkedIn integration. And after speaking with Dan, I'm going to bring that in, but I haven't brought that in yet.
Nice. Good.
Okay. So let's look at some views. Again, only the ones that we're going to wanting to make changes to. Sarita, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, your turn. You're up. Which views are we going to possibly make changes to?
How about contacts I follow?
Generally, that's not one that I would use because a lot of people aren't using the follow thing here. But let's just go from top to bottom.
Okay, I was looking at the configuration sheet, and I'm following you
Oh, did I
with the
choose the
sheet.
one on the configuration sheet? I might have done
Yes,
that.
you did.
Okay, you're reading instructions. Okay, shame on me.
Okay.
I was doing this late
Sarita,
at night, so
Sarita has taken our aptitude test. She scores very high on conscientiousness and attention to detail. So
Okay.
I hope I'm not talking out of school, but I'm
Well-
I'm thrilled with that because I think that
Yeah, we'll do
explains a
that
lot.
one. So I'm going to do active contacts. The active contacts subgrid. This is a subgrid on an account form. Traditionally, that might be used. All contacts, we may choose that one as well because we might put in the column of what stage are they within the education process. Okay. Contact associated view. And let's see here, contacts I follow. There you go for reading that there, Sarita.
You're welcome.
My active contacts, which is always a good one. And that should be it. We can always add more later. Okay. Charts. So Sarita, since you're keeping me honest here in my document, are we bringing in any charts?
Not that I can see. I don't see any charts for contacts.
That is correct. Fields. What are we doing here, Sarita?
Okay, it says all address one fields, since we will be making label changes to these.
Yep.
So it's the all address one fields.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I think when I wrote this, and I'll have to edit it a little bit. I don't probably need all the address ones, but really the ones I need. Let me dismiss that. Are the ones that are going to be used for primarily mailing labels. I don't really need faxes because we're not going to be using that anyway. We're not going to put that on a view or somewhere else. So address line 1, address line 2, address line 3, although we're probably not going to use line 3. Postal code / zip code is the same thing. PO box, primary country, state or province. If we're dealing with Canada, which we're dealing with US veterans, so we can probably just change that straight to state. But that's the underlying field that it is right now. The telephones I would not worry about. City. Oh, that's address 2. Did I get state? State or province. Postal code is zip. Address line 1, line 2 or 3. County, the composite, and city. Okay, cool. So I think that's it here. And remember what we did with accounts. We didn't do any keys. 1 to N we left as is. All these we left the same. Everywhere else through here. Okay? Finish. So we have now added 2 stock fields and then activities I put none. So we've added 2 stock entities, excuse me, not fields, to our overall solution that is similar to what we did in the 90-day trial. So right from here is where you can start creating the one-to-one relationships here, accounts. And I'll send a new copy of this, by the way, to everyone. So we've got number of employees, industry. At the, I can't remember if there are any more at the account level, you know, but maybe we do, and you could change the wording if you don't like these. These are long field names. Okay. I'm going to give you a little leeway, and I'm suggesting a little leeway, and this is for everyone on the team. If you think of something that is, and you saw it here, I just brainstormed, I just added a couple of these things here. If you think of something that you think in a business would be appropriate, and this is part of what a consultant does, basically bring it up to John Reynolds, and you can all discuss it, vote on it, and then the final approval will be Dan, who is your customer. So I'm trying to teach you technically as well as the business side of it. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. John, you were going to say something?
No. I think all what is I think we would well, I would, and I think I may be speaking for everybody else. I think we have, what we need to do is, I think, pretty straightforward. It is the how that I think is really of interest. Is that we've seen a couple of times now where there's a couple of different ways of doing stuff, and I think
Sure.
that sort of critical thinking, I think, is really going to serve us better. And with the point, I think we're seeing it as John, kind of guides us through this, that we will never have a program or a project that will not require us to research, seek advice, etc. This is really about learning how to find out what you don't know, which is a lot. It is a lot now, and it will continue to be, right? Nobody knows so much that they don't need to go do research. So, yeah, I think that's the key. If nothing else, I hope you come out of this with just knowing what you don't know.
Okay. So let me ask the question here. Well, actually, you know what? I'm just going to do it right now so that people can see how I do it, and we're going to go from there. So I'm going to click into the account field, into the account entity here. And if you'll notice, I can go into the fields area, and I'm just going to create a new field. So this is how to create a one-to-many field. So we're going off one-to-one field. Sorry, excuse me. Off of the account entity. So I'm going to say veteran, what's the display name? Vet hiring program, meaning do they have one or not? And this is actually one that I did not show you before, which is two options, yes or no. And unfortunately, it always has no first. So I'm just going to move this up. I'm thinking here, sorry for the pause. I'm actually going to change this to a multi-select. Oh, excuse me, not a multi-select, excuse me, an option set, because we're going to say yes. We're going to have no, and we're going to have unknown, just in case, they want to, again, put this here. Does that make sense on how to create a one-to-one field? I've made this optional, which is fine. Okay. And if you'll notice here, I can actually have it be a default value of one of these, but for right now, I'm just going to keep it blank. So I have created the field at the account level. That's a one-to-one relationship. Okay. Should you wish to use the newer user interface. And again, this is very similar. If I look at my account entity here, oh, excuse me, this is the overall environment. Let me do a refresh here. And you'll see why I did that. So if I look at all the entities, the fields created on the account entity, what did I call that field? What did I call that one? Veteran hiring program, vet hiring program. These are all the fields here. Look at that. Vet hiring program. So it's, where do you feel comfortable doing it? It's up to you. Me personally, I like this tree structure. I'm an older guy, so I've been used to the tree structure from the Windows days. But if you like the web browser structure, you can do it in powerapps.com, no problem. So let me ask another question. I'll do this here. Did we want to change the label to some of these things?
Yeah, instead of address 1, just address.
Right. So right from here, I can double click, and then the display name, get rid of that. Let me move this here. Done. I'll let you configure, you can do the rest of them as well. Okay? So again, it's 6 of one, half dozen of another in terms of how you want to no, I don't want to stay on change. Sorry. Did I save this? Oh, save. I got to save over here. This is a little different because you got to save it in the browser. In the other kind of more Windows-based app, you didn't have to save it. So again, I don't want to confuse you, but it's 6 of one, half does the other, whichever you feel like you like the user interface better. Okay. Any questions on that? And if you'll notice here, here's my new entity if I wanted to create it here. Or I would actually ask you to create the new entities in here. And the reason being is because this is part of the solution file here. So if should I create a new entity? Are you guys comfortable in creating new entities, or you want me to walk you through it? I did do it in the document, but I can walk you through it if you wish.
John, I think we're totally comfortable with that. We did create the new entities, remember, in the trial environment.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Not only created them, but also created the relationships one-to-many. I think we're pretty good with that, unless it's different in this environment than it was in the trial environment. I think
it is not. It is not. It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
John
Go
Kassar.
ahead.
This is. Oh, go ahead, Robert.
I had a question about when you create a new entity where it says areas that display this entity. In some cases, I had multiple options like we see here with sales, service, marketing, training. When I created a new environment, all I had was training and settings. I mean, what is that telling us?
It's where do you want it to show up over here. So now I don't have this here, but if you'll note, if you go back to the training one that we were using, if you recall, when you hit this, you had customer service, field service, project service, sales. Remember you had all those areas?
Okay, yeah, I'm following.
That's where you're allowing it to show up in each of those areas for that new entity. But when we're creating an app and we have not created that entity yet, we would put that into, you know what, I'm just going to create a new entity right now just to show you this. I know that you're comfortable with it, but I want to just create a new entity here. So I'm going to create this new entity, and guys, keep me honest, because I want to have it show up within the app, which is why I want to create this right now. So I'm just going to call this job postings. Is that what we want to call it, John?
I think that's better than job orders in this context, yes.
Okay. And this is showing me where I want to see it. So if I had the sales app going, if I had some of these others going, I would show that. But I'm just going to choose the sales app, even though that we don't have this at all. Okay. I'm going to make this ownership of the user or team, which means when we set up permissions, ownership's going to go to either a user or a team. Okay. Business process flows. If you notice this little X here, if we were to create this, you cannot get rid of it. And we're not using the business process flow for this customer. Okay, meaning Microsoft Military Affairs. Notes, activities, they might have some activities. Don't worry about connections for a moment. Document management, we're not doing that, but we can always come back and add it later. Duplicate detection, yes. Allow quick create. Yeah, we'll allow for a quick create. We can always get that done with that later. That brings up a small, simple form on the left-hand side of on the right-hand side of the screen, as opposed to a brand new window that's refreshed. That's the quick create. Okay. Does that make sense what I said, what the quick create is? You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I do. I'm
seen
familiar.
that many times.
Cool. All right, cool. Sarita, you good with that?
Yes, I'm good with it.
Okay, cool. All right. So I'm just going to go through here.
And we're kind of checking in a little bit. Daniel, haven't heard much from you. Just want to make sure you're following, and this is working for you.
Yes, I'm still here and I'm following.
Okay. And I know we've gone over a little bit of time, but I'm trying to pack in as much as possible so that you can continue working and doing what needs to be done. Okay. So I'm creating the new entity. I haven't done anything. Shit, did I do this right? I did not do this right. Okay, don't do what I do. I forgot something. I did something wrong. And you'll see why here in just a moment. I just remembered something. But it is in my instructions, Sarita. I probably didn't follow my instructions, but it is in my document if you're going to keep me honest.
Okay, no problem.
And this is a step that is if you don't do it right the first time, you got to delete it and recreate it. So I'm deleting the entity. I'm going to add a new entity to this solution file, and you'll see the mistake I made. Glad I found this out now. Notes, activities, feedback, don't care about, allow quick create. Now, by default, Microsoft always wants you to have this field, and it always sets this up as business required. So this is a field that they must fill something in, which is a pain in the ass for the users in the user form. So make it optional, and we can hide this later, but I'm just going to put this as job title. So it's always kind of unique because people always have different job titles, and I'm making it optional in the event that they may or may not want to fill that in.
Now there will be a job title in this, right? So we're basically going to have a unique identifier of the job, obviously, but there's going to be a job title and there's going to be an employer. But and the job title is required.
Well, and John, because this is Victor, I've found that rather than fighting with keeping it off of the form and hiding it on the form, and like John Reynolds said, it's something we're going to need anyway. I found that just renaming it to a field that you always have and will always use made it easier for me to keep it on that form and not fight with it on the form.
So you're absolutely correct, but sometimes you would rather have this field be an option set but you can't make it an option set because there are some fields, some relationships that you'd rather it be an option set or a date field
or a numeric. In other words, rather than a single line. In other words, we're stuck with it as a single line of text. So we're better off making it optional and then picking a custom one later if we need.
So
I
there
get
are
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, so I'm still making this optional, John, because I'm not sure everyone's going to fill in a job title, and if we set this up to integrate with another system, it's going to be populated anyway, so I'm going to leave it as optional. Okay.
Okay, does that mean then that we need to create a custom field that will satisfy the job title requirement?
This is no. We do not need to create a custom field at all. This is it.
Okay, well, okay. I don't know how we can post a job without having the job title in it. I mean, we can, but it would be kind of strange to post a job and not have a title in it.
So my other option is, because this is a text field, I could make it required, but once you make it required, if we're going to make it a required field.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it.
I just don't want to do it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, it's going to be, I think the users, Dan, you're still on, I think, you're going to find it to be kind of, well, you're going to find it to be necessary to put a job title in there for all of your tracking and reporting purposes, but I get what you're saying, John.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to save and close this here. So that was the mistake I made. I didn't deal with that primary field. And if you didn't deal with the primary field when you created it, you got to delete it and start over just like we did. So as I said, don't do as I do. Read the document I sent you because I did make a change to the primary field. Okay. So if I go back to job postings, I'm going to create a couple of things here. Actually, let me see here. Let me go to the model-driven app, and I'm going to add an existing model-driven app to this solution file. And again, the reason I'm adding it is because when we take this solution file and copy it over to production, magically all the changes we made in the solution file will come over to production. Yes, include required components. Should definitely do that. And
when you say production, you're really talking about the sandbox version.
We're in the sandbox right now, MSSASB. So when we go to production, it's going to be military affair. And the reason it does say military affairs was you got a maximum of 15 characters. So it's going to be it's going to be militaryaffair.crm.dynamics.com, and that's going to be on Microsoft's production servers.
Right, and the only reason I mention is that you know, when we use the term production, that's sort of the final live application is going to be actually used day to day, and to which we'll publish what we have here in the sandbox, just to make that distinction.
Now, in this app designer here, let's see here, save and close. Let me refresh the screen here. And now I'm going to go back to this sitemap here. And I'm going to go under the employers area. I'm going to add in another sub area under employers. And in this case, I should be able to find job postings. Make sense?
Yeah. I think one thing I just want to point out, earlier you created an app using this view, right? Or entity rather, using this view. And the entity we just created was using the classic view, and there are some stark differences there. There are a lot more options in the classic view than there
Yep.
are in this view.
Absolutely correct, which is why, because they're not at parity. Now, everything will go to the web view later, but Microsoft was coming from some legacy stuff because we got our butt kicked by Salesforce and some of the ways they're doing things. So we are playing catch up. And if you know anything about Microsoft, Microsoft may never be the first one of the party, but we've got a hell of a lot of money and customer base to come to the party late and take out the competition. That's generally what we do.
If they don't buy them first.
If we don't buy them first, that's correct. Okay.
By the way, Robert, from this designer, you could always edit each entity by just clicking clicking it, but you will not be able to get to the entire component design view from here. You have to go back to the customize the environment to cut it the whole thing. Is that right, John?
Correct. So that's this area, which is the new one, or the classic view, which Robert just brought up, which is more full featured at this point. A little kludgy to go through, but more full featured.
John, I would like you to talk about forms here a little bit because that screws me up. I noticed the entities are under the data, and the forms, in my mind, any form should be able to be tied to any data, but in here it's not. It's obviously tied to a data element within that entity. Can you explain how a little bit about the forms and the entities in which they reside, which kind of locks them from any other entity?
Actually, let me just respond because it relates to what we've already worked with. A form can contain a reference to another entity that has different data, right? That's the one-to-many. It could be a referential. It could be a lookup or something like that. But basically, that's how you access data from another entity from one entity. John, am I right about that?
Correct. So, Victor, if I'm understanding you correctly, your confusion is the form, let's just call it the account form, is only dealing with data from the account entity, and you're having trouble relating it and linking it to other related entities. Did I understand your question correctly?
Yeah, well, yes. I would expect forms to be I would expect it to be outside of entities altogether, and then pick and choose what data you want, rather than going in deeper and then coming out with, like John Reynolds said, with either a grid or a lookup.
Yeah,
so it's kind of weird. It starts to me too low, but then you can come out and pull other things by a lookup or a grid.
Yeah. So this is the best way to say this. You have too much development experience and access, which is where that question is coming from.
I get it. An employer one time asked me if I had any experience in insurance, and I said no, and he said great, because anything else would screw you up.
Right.
So I get it. I have to rethink. I have to retrain my brain. I have to retrain. Yep, I get it.
And part of the other reason you're having to understand that here is, if you'll notice here, this is the account view. Of course, we don't have any data in here. I don't think I have any data. I might have one record here. I got one record here. So we have one record in here, because the way that users are navigating, to answer your question, is they're navigating through different entities. So that's the other reason it's like that. Okay.
I think I have an explanation that Victor might understand a bit, if I can give it a shot. Forms are how data is inputted by an end user. Views are how it's displayed to an end user. So if an entity is essentially like a small database kind of, and a form displayed to a certain user will allow them to enter data into that database based on the fields included in the form. certain fields will be included on one form that one end user will be able to enter specific data. User number 2 will see a different form, and they'll be able to update essentially the same entity or micro database, but inputting different entity limited by what's shown on the form. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, and yes, and for the sake of, yep.
Yeah, it's a form of
No, well, we'll plug on. That brought up 10 more questions, but no, I get it. I get it. I get it. I just have to learn how to use it. That's all.
Okay. So we've created the one-to-many relationship, and you saw there that I could then add it to the app. And then if I refresh this form here, I don't know why I don't have it here, but
Go to click on ABC company and then go to related. It might show up there.
no, you know what? I know why. Save, and I haven't published it,
Yeah,
which
there
would
you go.
mean it would be able to show up right here to navigate to. And we'll get a nice looking icon instead of this little widget here. But remember, all we did was add the entity. I didn't create any fields. I didn't create any relationships. So nothing else is done. I just did this for one reason, which was to show you how we could add it to the overall app. Okay. And that was down here. I added the model driven apps, and then I went into the designer of this and started and I added it to it. But and you'll have to do the same thing for job applicants, meaning the veterans are tied to the job postings, and you'd probably want to add job applicants down here for veterans. So you could see a view there, or you could see it up here. And you'll want to do the same thing with training locations. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that as an example. And I know this is going to be a long recording, but in this recording, you have the elements of how to create a one-to-one relationship, a one-to-many relationship, and then within the documentation I sent, and I'll send out a new copy since I made a few changes, of how to create the one-to-many relationship with the appropriate keys, and then how to add a subgrid on a form so that when you're looking at, when you did this before, so when you're looking at an account record, you could see all the job postings they've done and so forth. So with that, we've gone for about an hour and a half. Normally our brains are a little full by that time and I'm a little talked out. So I want to conclude this, but I also want to make sure that you have your questions answered. And then John, I will send you a new copy of this document here because I made a few changes. And if you'll notice in yellow, you need to talk with a customer, which is Dan. And then the only thing that I did not create or that there are questions on, scrolling down, is the one-to-many relationship for training centers. I did not create the screen for that. You know what I mean? I didn't create the screens like I did before for creating the creating the one-to-many relationships and then creating the subgrids, etc.
John, is it fairly straightforward how we'll be able to, in other words, see from a user perspective, to go to a site to manage this from a user perspective? Do we have that information?
You mean for you to log in?
Yes.
John, do me a favor. Send me your username and password, and I'm going to try to troubleshoot why, or to troubleshoot that you can get in, which should be the exact same for everyone else. So if you could send me that, that'd be great.
Okay. One problem though is I can't really log in because I don't have a password and it won't recognize, for some reason, it's when I try to reset it, it's not recognizing the CAPTCHA that I've got up there. So I can
Wait,
continue
John.
to try.
John, this is Robert. Sorry to interrupt, but I got to the same point you did, and it's not a CAPTCHA. Like the username essentially that you log in with, when you do forgot password, it told me something like this account is not set up or eligible for password reset or something like that. It seemed to me like, yeah, someone behind the scenes has to reset my password.
Okay.
Were you able to get in? Were you able to get in?
This is Robert. No. So the email you sent, I clicked the link and it logged me into.
Before you do that, hey John, can you make Robert the presenter? I don't know if I can make him the presenter. Can I? Oh yeah, make presenter. There you go.
All right.
Robert, I just made you the presenter, so you can show me what you're doing, please.
Yep. Let me see. Okay. So right now, this is kind of where I'm at. Okay. So this is the account. This will sign us into kind of the test environment we've been using. Let me see here. The email you sent had a link that brought, oh, here it is. This is the username that I have to log in with. See this here, my email extension. So I need to copy and paste this, and I went a roundabout way of doing it. But
Did you set up? Do you have a separate profile for your Microsoft for your Chrome? Remember I was telling you about that?
True, but I think in this instance, essentially trying to get into the 365 environment, because this is the Azure directory. So I have the groups, right? So in the group setting, I do have the, okay. So this signed me in under this one.
Right.
So
do me a favor. Click on towards the top right where you have, it looks like a little bomb or something. I don't know what that is in black. Okay.
That's me. That's a picture of me.
Oh, that's you. Sorry, I couldn't tell.
Hey,
It's so
John,
small.
I already have a separate identity set up. Do you want me to?
That's okay. We got Robert's screen. So Robert, go back to your picture up there. And then click on manage people. And let's just say add person. There you go. And let's just call this Microsoft production. So this way you know, and give it a picture you like that will remind you that it's Microsoft production. Okay.
I think I have a little cat or dragon.
Dog, right. And now go to office.com, or go to that link I sent you, I should say. Go to the link I sent you in the email. Not your username and password, but the link. No, not that one. Oh, you know what? I didn't send you an email this morning, Robert. Let me, because I didn't have your email address. Let me forward you the email that I just sent to John and them. So what's your email address, Robert?
Robert.Farrell, that's F as in Frank, ARRELL at gmail.com.
Okay. I just sent you an
Can you
email.
put me on there too, John? Can you put Victor on there too?
Yeah.
Victor.F, that was.
Victor. I'm sorry, what? I lose you, Victor?
Victor.F.Roselli at Gmail.
Okay. I just sent that to you, Victor. Okay. So Robert, let me go back to the screen.
Yep, got this.
Highlight
right
that.
here.
Yeah, just that. Copy that. Go to that other environment we just set up, or the other profile you set up for? No. Yeah, that's it. Mass production. There you go. And now log in with that long extension that you have. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, this is where I was getting stuck. So the link that you sent in the original email will get me in the Azure directory and I can see the groups, but the password, I don't know if it was set up by somebody else, but if I do forgot password, type in my user ID, even if I get the captcha right here. Yes, the self-service password reset is not available to this type of user.
Huh.
And that's what led me to believe that I guess whoever set up this account or whatever system set up this account, there's some kind of disconnect between, like, the link you sent me originally allows me to get into here.
Yeah, that was the old one. Yeah. I'll figure out why, because it did not give me an option. I added you to the directory, but it did not give me an option to give you a password. At least I don't think it did. So okay, let me figure out why that didn't work.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, the original link, if I click that, it opens up the Azure directory and I'm already logged in and I see I'm a part of the groups and so on. But if, I have to use that link to actually access it. I can't log in externally.
Okay, let me see. Let me see if I can find that on why to get you access. And I'm not sure why. So let me see if I can find that and then get you all the same password.
Okay, yeah, I think that's the same issue everyone's having, and we should be able to get into, because right now these are the only environments I have access to, and that's because I'm logged in under the original login. If I was able to log in under this invite, then I suspect I would be able to see the sandbox environment.
Yeah. Okay. And John, you weren't able to log in at all?
I was not.
Huh. Interesting.
No. Again, I got the same thing as Robert did, and it was like it prompted me for the password, and the only option I had was to reset my password, and then I ran into trouble there too.
Okay, so let me figure that out and figure out why that's not happening. And Victor, I just got your email bounced back, but I found your email address, so you should have this in a moment. But you're going to have the same issue until I set up passwords, and I'm probably going to set you guys all up with the same password.
By the way, I already have like 5 Microsoft accounts, John. So that email that you're using for me, you'll find me already in your registry. I don't know if you just need to adjust my permissions.
The Gmail account. The Gmail account.
Under my Gmail account, I've purchased things, so Microsoft recognizes me as having that. And then
that's probably a different. That might be a different system. Like, so for example, Julie Yak, she's a Microsoft partner. It found her when I put in her email address. John Reynolds, it found him when I put in his email address because he's got a Office 365 account. But all the Gmail addresses I put in for Dan Wilson, Sarita, Victor, and Robert, you weren't in our Azure directory, so I had to add you to the Azure directory.
Okay.
So
okay.
I'll figure out why. I'll talk to Microsoft support and say, hey, how come I couldn't I added these people to the Azure directory, but I have no idea now why you can't log in. Because I added you all to have access to Dynamics as well. So let me figure that out. Actually, let me think about this here. Hey, do me a favor, Dan. Oh, Robert. Robert, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
We're still looking at, we're not looking at your screen. Do me a favor, go back to that environment for a moment.
Yep. Hold on 1 second here.
Go back to, I mean, that Chrome environment, I should say.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. There we go.
And go to office.com or portals.office.com. Either one, I think will get you there. Maybe it's portal with it. Let's try logging in with your email address, your Gmail account.
I do have a live account. I mean, I can log in with that, but it's pretty basic.
Yeah, try, and we never set up, yeah, try that and see what happens. I don't think it'll give you. Okay, try forgot my password here. Or reset it now. Reset it now.
Okay, I don't know why I did that.
Yeah. Okay. Let me work with tech support to figure out how to try that one. Who knows? I don't know if that'll get you anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think it's the password's the issue. I don't think it's tied with my personal email. Yeah, and
All right.
then this goes into the.
Yeah, we're back to the same place. Okay. Let me figure out let me talk to tech support and figure out. I mean, it's really easy by the way, this is normally not as complicated. Normally when we set up customers, you just set them up, they give you an access and so forth. But when you're work for Microsoft and all security, they're just like, locking everything down to set people up. So normally it's not this hard when you are all consultants, by the way. So.
Cool. Yeah, I suspect someone just has to send an email to everyone so we can set up a password for our account.
Okay.
That's what I suspect.
Hey, gentlemen, so I know what I need to do, but in the meantime, take a look at the document. John, I just sent you an update of that document. And what you may wish to do in that document, John, is distribute some tasks in there.
Yeah, I'm going to reload. I'm going to update the document that's in the Learning Center. I don't want to add more cycles to your busy schedule, John, but generally, if I'm not around to do that, that's where it is. It's in the Learning Center or Learning Community.
Okay, and I don't know if I remember having access to it or not. So,
you do
anyway.
But that's
okay.
All right. I'll update the one that's already in there for the rest of you.
Okay, so hopefully this was helpful for people to go through this kind of live. I'll make sure you all get access and then start doing things as appropriate. And then John, if you want to stay on the line, that'd be great.
Will do.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thank you. You all have a great day.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Be well, guys.
Over and out. Have a good day.
Okay, thanks. So John?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the only thing I would say that needs to be done is there's a lot of one-to-one and one-to-many relationships and what have you. So that people don't trip over each other, you may want to put down who should be doing what.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely. That's going to be. I want to get in first and then just see kind of the lay of the land. And but yeah, I'm going to be the single point of control here on this. Well, with you if need be. But yeah, they're not going to do anything that's going to have any sort of implications for the production version.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm going to run. I go grab some lunch. I'll work on getting you access.
Okay, John. Yeah, that would be great. Once we get that, we'll be good, and I'll want to start loading some data.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Hey, thank you, John. As always, man.
Okay, see ya. Bye.
Bye bye.